Although it feels like a new and modern technology, electric engines are not a new concept. The London Underground led the way with their own electric engines, so it seemed obvious that the technology would spill out of the tunnels and into the outside world. But for one railway company, they took their electric services to a whole new level, and the Brighton Belle was the result. Pullman, right from the start, has gone hand in hand with luxury. An import from the United States, these carriages operated as first class, offering a steward service to the most wealthiest of travellers from 1874. The first Pullman coach ran from Bradford Foster Square to London St Pancras. The singular Midland coach would be integrated with standard stock and would be a lot more roomier than the others, allowing for semi-privacy, while the steward would ensure the passengers were given everything they needed. The singular coach was so popular that in less than a year, the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway began using them on their lines as well. Within 6 years, they had gone from a singular coach to offering an entire Pullman train. It was known as the Pullman Limited, and it was heralded as the first luxury train in the UK. It ran between London Victoria and Brighton, and the service proved popular. So popular, in fact, that William Stroudley had to charter and design a second Pullman train in 1888. Only this one had the modern and fabulous electric lighting on board. In 1908, it was felt that a third service needed to be introduced. This time it was given a name, the Southern Belle. The LB and SCR touted that this was the most luxurious train in the world and took passengers to and from the seaside for 12 shillings each. 12 shillings may not seem a lot, but when the modern household was only earning £1 a week, nearly 20 shillings, then this was a pricey trip. By the 1930s, the LB and SCR had been swallowed by Southern Railways, and with it, they inherited the Southern Belle. The Southern Belle had grown in popularity, but not in innovation, and other than a change of interior decor to keep up with modern styles, it remained beautiful but simple. The Southern Railway wanted to breathe new life into this popular classic and took full advantage when a proposal to electrify the Brighton main line was proposed. This wasn't the first line to have the electrification treatment. That honour fell to the South London line using its overhead high-tension cables. But this was the first ever electrified mainline service in the country. The new mode of propulsion meant new rolling stock as well, and with it, a new type of bell. The railway still wanted to use Pullman and allowed for Pullman to co-own the carriages. Pullman had made a name for itself, and it was common that a trip in one of its coaches gave people bragging rights. The Southern Railway tasked the Metropolitan Camel and the Birmingham Railway Carriage Company to make 3 5-car Pullman coaches, kitchen and motor cars. They briefed the company that they must mix the very modern in technology with the classic style that Pullman was known for. 225 horsepower traction motors would power the train, which would draw power from the third rail via a contact shoe and were divided equally amongst the train. The leading car also housed the motor brake, making it 22 tons heavier than any of the coaches on the train. Each train was comprised of a leading car with a brake and parlour, 2 kitchen cars, both of these were first class areas, a trailing parlour car, and then finally a second leading car with brake and parlour area. This configuration meant that there was not a requirement for shunting or laborious turning of the engines. The driver simply had to walk to the other end of the train, and everything was there ready and waiting. It goes to show that if it's a good idea, stick with it. On the 31st of December 1932, the very last steam-hauled regular train headed by the engine Stephenson left Victoria bound for Brighton, and the very next day 1st January 1933, the electrics were turned on and the new Pullman train took to the rails. After a year of successful runs, it took the name Southern Belle and revamped it to Brighton Belle. Brighton Belle's journey would take a passenger from Victoria to Brighton in about an hour, which isn't a long time, but the Southern Railway wanted to offer the same services you would expect from longer haul trains. This included offering food for the first time. The third classes would be offered light refreshments, including sandwiches and biscuits, but for those specifically dining on board, the service was more silver. The railway knew its limits and knew that a meal of several courses was not going to work on such a short train. So the meals were modest by Pullman standard, with breakfast especially becoming a favourite, especially full English and kippers. The staff that serves the passengers were all supplied and trained by Pullman. It was Pullman's company policy that the third-class passengers be treated as well as any other first-class passengers on any other train. If that was the case, then Pullman's first class would be equal to royalty. And royal it was. It was not uncommon that heads of state and royalty themselves would travel on this train. The trains were very popular, and it wasn't uncommon that 2 5-car sets were coupled together just to satisfy the demand. During the Second World War, one of the units was damaged in a bombing, so it was decided to suspend the service. But after the war, the trains were restarted once again and service resumed as normal. It even shook off the 1948 nationalisation without a care in the world, still offering its services as it had done for years. There was one thing British Rail was never a fan of: unconformity. It wanted to present all of its stock under one identity and one colour. This corporate identity included new signs, symbols, even using the same font on all the British Railways notice boards. The biggest change was to the colour of the stock, and this included the Brighton Belle. The Brighton Belle had always carried the same livery of umber and cream, but overnight the livery was changed to blue and grey, and the interior Art Deco motifs and decorations were replaced. Not many people were too happy with the move, but the idea of modern and luxury was still at the heart of the Belle. In the 1970s, more and more electric trains were being developed, and British Rail decided to call time on the Brighton Belle. The public were horrified that the Belle was being discontinued, but in reality, compared to other trains at the time, the Belle was not exactly the most comfiest of rides. Its interior needed much work and was faded, and it was in desperate need of an overhaul. British Rail did not consider Pullman an option anymore, and without Pullman, the Belle was simply just another old train. Sadly, even though the Belle was popular and knowing that there would be a public backlash, British Rail pulled the plug on the Brighton Belle, and the service stopped in April 1972. Unusually for the Belle, British Rail decided that not one coach or car would go for scrap. Instead, they were disconnected and sold to private collectors. It was hoped that the carriages could be converted into rolling stock that could be pulled by a steam engine. The carriages that were most desirable were the 6 first-class kitchen cars and were snapped up by both British Pullman and the Orient Express. The others had mixed fates. In 1991, the Belle suffered a massive blow when car number 90 on set 3052 was destroyed when a fire raged through it as it was being restored in Carnforth. It was moved to the East Lancashire Railway, where it received further attacks due to vandalism and arson. After checking the car carefully, it was deemed unviable and it was scrapped in 1995. Because only 15 were made and 15 were sold, we know exactly where each car is. The cars form the trains which were named as unit numbers 3051, 3052 and 3053. Car number 280, which was part of train 3051, was given the name of Audrey. After the split, like its sisters, it ended up on the Orient Express and is still in use. Car number 281, which was part of 3053, was sold as a restaurant to the Horses Carriages in Chingford before going on loan to the Colne Valley Railway, before being sold to the Orient Express and placed in traffic after restoration and given the name of Gwen. Car number 283, which was part of 3053, sat alongside the Railway Hotel Inn and it was renamed the Brighton Belle in Winsford. It was sold to the Orient Express in 1998, who gave the car the name of Mona and is stored awaiting restoration. Car number 284, which was part of 3052, would end up in the hands of the Orient Express and entered service in 1988 and was given the name of Vera. Car number 286, which was part of 3051, was last moved in Steamtown in Carnforth after being sold to the Orient Express. It has yet to be given a name and is in storage at Stewart's Lane. Car number 289, which was part of 3051, was moved to Stockport in 1972. It has since been converted to 3 ensuite bedrooms and is now the Derbyshire Belle Motel. Car number 292, which was part of 3053, has had a well-travelled history. It was sold to the Brighton Belle Society, who sold it to be a part of the Orient Express's fleet. The car travelled to Belgium for extensive repair after vandals had attacked it before sending it back to Carnforth for further work. Car number 293, which was part of 3053, was sold to the Brighton Museum before being sold to the Orient Express's fleet. It travelled with 292 to Belgium and was brought back to Carnforth again for further work. I have purposely missed out cars number 279, 282, which is Doris, 285, 287, 288 and 291, with good reason. The Brighton Belle Trust was formed in 2009 with one goal: to bring back the Brighton Belle. They knew where each car was and drew up a plan of their viability. They understood that not all the cars could be saved and many were owned by the Orient Express and completely out of reach. But if they got 5, they would be able to achieve their dream. 288 and 291 were the first to be purchased and brought back to Derby to be modified for modern mainline use and restored. 288 had a fairly active retirement after being a dining car for the Swanage Railway and being bought by the Orient Express, but the Orient Express was happy to let the Trust buy 288 for the project. Car number 291 was on loan from the North Norfolk Railway and was regularly used in traffic before the Trust acquired her. Numbers 285 and 287 would soon join the cars in Derby. 285 was up for auction in 2008 after the Orient Express sold her. The Trust couldn't believe their luck and snapped her up. 287 came from the North Norfolk Railway and was on long-term loan to the Keith and Dufftown Railway. Finally, there was the hardest coach to get, the first-class kitchen car. Out of the 3, they selected Doris as the ideal candidate. Doris made her way to the Bluebell Railway, and it took a lot of negotiations to acquire her. Finally, the train was complete. The Trust got a final stroke of luck when 279, or Hazel as she is now known, was purchased in 2012. Work to get the Belle ready wasn't easy. 6 cars that had a multitude of histories now needed to work together as a complete train, but this time the Trust had to make each car modern mainline worthy without losing any of the flair and luxury that made the Belle famous. Lots of ideas were considered, even going as far as making it diesel-hauled, but it was decided that it had to be brought back to its own self-propelled glory. One of the obstacles the Trust had to overcome was the seating arrangements. The third-class parlours had 2 4-seater tables, and it made the coach seem cramped, and it was impractical for the Silver Sofas catering, so half of the tables were converted into 2-seater tables. This created a more intimate dining experience and more space for the staff to move about. It was finally decided that poor Doris's current kitchen was not going to supply the entire train with silver service, so an additional kitchen was added. This included a gas hob, so the chef can work even if the bell is not on the electric lines or is switched off. To cope with modern network, the bell would need a significant power boost. The voltage that runs the line would instantly fry the aging circuits on the bell within seconds, and the braking systems on the bell was not up to the rigour of mainline life. The truss had to also solve the problem of the rough running, as this would not do on a dining train. They wanted their passengers to eat their food, not wear it. The trust had only one option: new bogies and a new engine. British Rail MK6 bogies were selected. This came with the added bonus the truss were excited with. The electric shoes were now liftable, meaning that the train could either run on its own power or be hauled by either Class 73 in a push-pull configuration or pulled by a fully fitted Class 33. The addition of these new bogies and engines caused several structural changes to the bell to accommodate. This included extra strengthening to the motor cabs, the braking system had to be modernised with new air brakes, and electrical systems and the installation of new sanding gear, among other things. It was a complex, difficult plan, and in some respects, it was like building a new train from scratch. But the work is almost complete. Testing is underway, and as soon as the bell truss is given the green light, book your tickets. The Brighton Belle did to electric luxury travel as Scotsman did to steam. It immortalised it. I am so glad the Bell will be back in service soon. If you can't wait for the trust, Bellman.com offer their version of the Bell with some of the Brighton Belle's pullman coaches in tow. I will put both the Trust website and the Bellman's website below. I was in fact very lucky last week to catch up with the Statesman Pullman train in York, and as I waved goodbye enviously to those on board, it's possible that maybe, just maybe, just one of those wonderful coaches was in fact part of the Brighton Belle.